All right, today we're going to do something that might sound, well, a little crazy. We're going to take one single, super dense line of legal text and use it to crack open one of the most powerful and honestly, most misunderstood laws in the entire country. You ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, here it is. I know, right? At first glance, this just looks like a total wall of legal jargon. It's practically designed to make your eyes glaze over. You've got all these names, weird labels like cross appellate, a company, a bunch of numbers. It really feels like the kind of thing you're just supposed to skip over.
But here's the thing. What if we don't skip it? What if we treat it like a puzzle? Because believe it or not, every single word on that last slide has a very specific meaning. And if we can decode them, we're going to unlock a really fascinating story about law, big business, and who gets held accountable. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to solve this thing together.
So, the first and probably the most important piece of this whole puzzle is that one little acronym smack dab in the middle of all that text, RICO. Now, I'm willing to bet you've heard this word before, probably in a gangster movie, right? But what does it actually stand for? And more importantly, what does it really do?
Okay, so RICO stands for the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It was passed way back in 1970 with a very clear target in mind: organized crime. We're talking about dismantling massive criminal enterprises, like the mafia. You see, for the first time, this law gave prosecutors a way to go after the entire organization, not just the low-level guys on the street.
Now, this is where we get a really crucial plot twist. You see, there are actually two types of RICO. On the left, you've got the one you've heard about, criminal RICO. That's the one prosecutors use to put mobsters behind bars. But on the right, we have civil RICO, and that's what's going on in our case. The goal here isn't prison time. It's about victims getting compensated financially. And check this out. The standard of proof is lower. It's a whole different ballgame, a totally different kind of legal fight.
So how do you actually, build one of these civil RICO cases? Well, the law is super specific about it. You can't just walk into court and say, hey, that person did a bad thing. Nope. You have to follow a very specific recipe. And the key ingredients in that recipe? They're called predicate acts.
All right, so here is that recipe, broken down step by step. First, you need a predicate act, and don't worry, we'll get to what that means in a second. Second, you need at least 2 of these acts, and they have to happen within a 10-year window. Third, they can't just be random, unrelated events. They have to form what the law calls a pattern of racketeering. And finally, step 4, that whole pattern has to be connected to an enterprise, which could be a big corporation or even just a loose group of people working together.
So what are these predicate acts we keep talking about? Well, the law actually gives a whole list of crimes that count. Think of them like the official ingredients for our RICO recipe. And yeah, some of them are exactly what you'd expect for a law aimed at mobsters, bribery, extortion, money laundering. But then you see things like mail fraud and wire fraud on the list. Basically using the mail or any electronic communication to run a scheme. And that right there is the key. That's the gateway for how a law designed for gangsters ends up in the middle of a modern business fight.
Okay, so now we have our RICO recipe. We know the ingredients. Let's go all the way back to that crazy-looking case name and see how all these puzzle pieces finally start to fit together. It's time to connect the dots in Osterneck versus Barwick.
All right, let's break down who's who here. On one side, we have our plaintiff, Miles Osterneck. He's the one doing the suing. But now, look at who he's suing. Is it a bunch of mobsters? Nope, it's a corporation, Barwick Industries. It's a few individuals from that company, and get this, it's even a huge accounting firm, Ernst Whinney. This shows you exactly how civil RICO is being used today, not just for taking down crime families, but for these really complex financial and business fights.
So let's look back at those first few words from our original puzzle: federal, RICO, predicate, and liability analysis. Suddenly, that doesn't sound like complete gibberish anymore, does it? We know what all those words mean now. It just means the court's job was to do an analysis, to look at what happened and see if the defendant's actions actually fit that RICO recipe we just talked about. Did they commit the right predicate acts? If so, are they liable?
Okay, so this brings up a really important question. Why would anyone go through all this trouble? I mean, building a civil RICO case is way more complicated than just filing a regular old fraud lawsuit. So what's the payoff? Well, the answer comes down to the absolutely incredible power this law hands to a successful plaintiff.
And here it is. This is the big one, the hammer. If you win a civil RICO case, you get what's called treble damages. That's a fancy legal term for saying you don't just get back the money you lost, you get back 3 times that amount.
plus your attorney's fees. This one little rule transforms a lawsuit from a simple dispute into a massive, high-stakes weapon that can have absolutely devastating financial consequences for the loser.
And that really brings us full circle. We started with a line of text that looks like a foreign language, and we decoded it to find this incredibly powerful legal tool. But it leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? Is this weapon, which was forged specifically to take down massive criminal empires, being used the way it was intended when it's pointed at corporations, accountants, and investors in a business dispute? Honestly, that's a debate that is still raging in courtrooms all across the country, even today.